This is the second video on the on the book of a famous writer Malcolm Gladwell. The book name is The Tipping Point. In this book, the author explains how little things can make big difference. So in last video, I told you how the author explains about uh, Hush Puppy's shoes got phenomenal growth. In today's video, I'm going to discuss the small part of this book, the next example, in which the author explains a sudden change in the crime rate in the New York City in the uh, 80s, in the 1980s and early 1990s. So let's start the book. Let's start the portion of the book in which the author says that there was a time not very long ago in the desperately poor New York City neighborhoods of Bronzeville and East New York, when the streets would turn into ghost towns at dusk. Ordinary working people would not talk on the sidewalks. Children would not ride their bicycles on the streets. Old folks would not sit on stoops and park benches. The drug trade ran so rampant and gang warfare was so high in that part of Brooklyn that most people would take to the safety of their apartment at nightfall. Police officers who served in Bronzeville in the 1980s and early 1990s say that in those years, as soon as the sun went down, their radios exploded with chatter between beat officers and their dispatchers over every conceivable kind of violent and dangerous crime. In 1992, there were 2,154 murders in New York City and 626,182 serious crimes, with the weight of those crimes falling hardest in places like Bronzeville and East New York. But then something strange happened at some mysterious and critical point. The crime rate began to turn. It dipped. Within 5 years, murders had dropped 64.3% to 770, and total crimes had fallen by almost half, with 355 thousand and 893 355,893. In Bronzeville and East New York, the sidewalks filled up again, the bicycles came back, and old folks reappeared on the stoops. There was a time when it was not uncommon to hear rapid fire like you would hear somewhere in the jungle in Vietnam, says Inspector Edward Misadri, who commands the police in Bronzeville. I don't hear the gunfire anymore, he says. The New York City police will tell you that What happened in New York was the city's policing strategies dramatically improved. Criminologists point to the decline of the crack trade and the aging of the population. Economists, meanwhile, say that the gradual improvement in the city's economy over the course of the 1990s had the effect of implying those who might otherwise have become criminals. These are the conventional explanations for the rise and fall of social problems. But in the end, none is any more satisfying than the statement that kids in the East Village caused the Hush Puppies revival. The changes in the drug trade, the population, and the economy are all long term trends happening all over the country. They don't explain why crime plunged in New York City so much more than in other cities around the country. And they don't explain why it all happened in such an extraordinarily short time. As for the improvements made by the police, they are important too, but there is puzzling gap between the scale of the changes in policing and the size of the effect on places like Bronzeville and East New York. After all, crime did not just slowly ebb in New York as conditions gradually improved. It plummeted. How can a change in a handful of economic and social indices cause murder rates to fall by two-thirds in 5 years? So this is the another question of what happened in New York in early 90s. What triggered causes that caused the crime rate to decline sharply? This is the another question which the author tried to explain later in this book. So as we go along the book in our coming videos, we will see that what really happened, that something small triggered some bigger results. So stay tuned for our coming videos on the book of The Tipping Point.